I've stayed in the front yard all my life. I want to peek at the back, where it's rough and untended, and hungry weed grows. A girl gets sick of a rose. I want to go in the backyard now, and maybe down the alley to where the charity children play. I want a good time today. They do some wonderful things. They have some wonderful fun. My mother sneers, but I say it's fine. How they don't have to go in at 8:45. My mother, she tells me that Johnny May will grow up to be a bad woman, that George will be taken to jail soon or late. On account of last winter, he sold our back gate. But I say it's fine. Honest, I do. And I'd like to be a bad woman too, and wear the brave stockings of night black lace, and strut down the streets with paint on my face.
Well, hey y'all, it's Ian, it's Exhibit B, it's Wednesday in Chicago, like I said. My name's Ian, one of your hosts for tonight.
I'm Jim, other host for the night.
Yeah, and before we start, just want to let you know, not only am I a host, but I will be on the chat. See, there's some of you on there already. I'll have some links to throw your way later in the show. It's good to see y'all.
The voice sounded familiar. Who was doing the reading?
Oh, that's, I believe, was someone named Mary Cerny doing the reading of Gwendolyn Brooks' poem. Amazing poet.
She's all right.
Yeah.
I like Gwendolyn Brooks.
If you haven't heard of Gwendolyn Brooks, go ahead and check that out.
Yeah, we're broadcasting live from the palatial,
the palatial
Stewart Manor, a palatial one-bedroom, one-bath.
Wonderful night here.
And before we really get into stuff, I'd like to do land acknowledgement, which acknowledges the fact that we're on stolen land, the result of acts of genocide perpetrated by white settlers and the United States of America against the indigenous inhabitants. I recognize the complexity of myself, a Black, non-Native man, doing so, but I do so with an open heart and as an act of solidarity between this nation's most oppressed peoples. This land was, is, and forever will be that of the Potawatomi, Kickapoo, Peoria, Ngami, and the Sioux. I use past, present, and future because we want to acknowledge that Native people are still here with us, surviving and thriving. Indigenous people are leading voices in the struggle against white supremacy and police brutality in Chicago. And we'd like to take a second to recognize the work of Chi Nations Youth Council and their mission to create a more supportive, open environment for Native youth to raise awareness of cultural identity and promote a healthy lifestyle through arts, activism, and education. We support their calls for the decolonization of the Zigagoon, the unceded Nishnawbe-Mishoktiwanan territory east of Michigan Avenue, and stand in solidarity with the protesters that were beaten by police this past Friday at the Black Indigenous rally downtown. To find out more about the land that you're on, we recommend downloading the Native Lands app. And if you're interested in crafting your own land acknowledgement statement, I suggest visiting the website for the Native Governance Center, which we'll
just drop
in the chat there.
Yeah, so a couple of resources I sent everybody. Today, obviously, we're getting together to do some awesome art, show you a couple great artists, but also we think it's important to be engaged with the community, engaged with things that are going on. So as well as that statement, we also have some charities we wanted to shout out to you guys. I'm going to throw that in the chat as well, just so you can get a look at some clothes.
Yeah, 2 of our performers decided to donate their honorariums to charities. One of those charities is the Brave Space Alliance, which is a Black-led and trans-led LGBTQ center on the South Side dedicated to creating and providing affirming, culturally competent programming and services for LGBTQ individuals. And the other charity is Asada's Daughters, another Chicago-based charity that provides youth with political education, leadership, and it's all rooted in the Black radical tradition.
Yeah, so obviously, lastly, I think it deserves a little recognition that we're coming to you from the times of COVID. At one point, this event was going to look a little different. It was going to be live. It was
In
gonna
person.
be in a place called a bar
A bar.
that people used to go.
Way back when, the before times.
Yeah, that was canceled. So we wanted to get together with everybody still. We wanted to find a venue for that. Obviously, we find ourselves here on Zoom now. That has been the best way for us to get there.
Right.
So,
And we support the wearing of masks, but right now in the studio or house, we're all practicing social distancing, staying 6 feet apart.
our director obviously is wearing a mask. Shout out to director Alex Shapiro. Doing a lot of work for y'all.
The whole thing every time.
Yeah.
Let's get into it.
All right. Yeah. Give me a drink here, buddy.
There you go.
But thanks. So yeah, we got together tonight. A few awesome artists to show you. A bunch of different forms that I think are really awesome. But yeah, I think we're going to start first with somebody that we've known for a while. Their name is Reid Drake.
Drizzy.
Drizzy, yeah. We met in school. We started to meet people that did a lot of cooler stuff than us.
Yes.
Reid was one of those people.
Much cooler stuff.
So, yes, Robin, let me, real quick, I've got some stuff to shout out for you real quick here. So, Reid Drake is a writer and an artist from North Carolina. They were a recipient of the Ragdale Foundation residency last year in 2019, recognized as a 30 under 30 by the Windy City Times for their work in schools, and currently working for Rough Housing with a horror film set in the Appalachian, Piedmont, and Outer Bank ecologies, which raised them. So check this out. I think y'all are going to like it a lot.
Thank you so much, Ian, for that introduction. And of course, thank you to the rest of the Bum Sophisticate and to the Guild Literary Complex for gathering all of us here tonight in this marvelous space. And of course, to all y'all who decided to come out on Wednesday night and hang out on the internet some more. I mean, I don't know. Aren't we all kind of tired of this? Anyways, thanks for being here. Of course, my name is Robin Reid, and I am all those things they just said, and I'm thrilled to share some new poetry with y'all tonight. But before I guess we get into all of that, I just wanted to address something and say, like, you know, maybe there's some people in the room who haven't seen me in a while, and my appearance might be a little shocking to them, to y'all. Oh, hey, oh my god, hey y'all. But I just wanted to say, like, I have been changing a lot this past year. I've been going through a lot of growth, and I am happy to say that I am here in front of you now in my final form, post-pupa, and all that good stuff. And shout out to the good folks over at Howard Brown. Your hormones really do the trick. So I am really excited. I'm going to share a few horror movies with you tonight. Or, I don't know. I've been calling them horror movies. Of course, I don't really know what they are, but the only way I can really get myself to write these days is if I tell myself I'm writing horror movies, and it really does the trick. So I'm just gonna keep calling them that. So I'm excited to show you some horror movies tonight. These horror movies you're about to see, you're going to hear Tammy Faye Baker take notes on Sleepaway Camp. You're gonna hear Toni Morrison check out A Cruising Ground with some hot young hustlers. You are gonna hear, of course, the angel of Anna Nicole Smith come back and share some insights from the other side with us. And yeah, I hope you have as much fun watching them, hearing them, witnessing them as I had writing them, recording them, filming them. And I guess one more note, or maybe two more notes of gratitude before we get into the movies. I just wanted to say really quickly thank you so much to the amazing writer, artist, performer, mother, warrior, healer, just all-around angel that is Anastasia Renee. Without your friendship, your guidance, your patience, kindness at this past year's Ragdale Foundation residency, I don't think these poems would have the confidence to think they have a place in the world. So thank you for that, and also thank you so much to another dear friend and angel on this earth, Jeremy Harris, for all of your time, attention, and tender care that you put into helping me prepare these little movies for tonight. Thank you so much. So, without further ado, I suppose we'll get right into it, and I don't know, let the cameras go. I don't know. What do you say? Whatever. Just watch these fucking movies, and I'll see you after the show.
Try being yourself. Just say never. I would rather die first, Angela. What are you looking for? A gun? No? A drill.
I had a dead person on my back for a long time, and I carried that man on my back till one day I heard a voice inside me say,
it's so wonderful to feel this far gone.
I have to compromise. 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 A man comes into my life and I have to compromise. I have to compromise. I
laid that body down. I said,
I have to compromise. I'm really not a very good swimmer.
You're a monster now that cannot be cured.
All you got is your little self. All you got is your little self. All you got is your little self.
I don't know, I don't feel like I can be. That's a good thing.
All you got is your little self. All you got is your little self. All you got is your little self.
Normal, like a mom and a dad and a dog and shit like that. Normal.
All you got is your little self. All you got is your little self. All you got is your little self.
What do I need to?
All you got is your little self.
Well, I don't know. I mean,
All you got is your little self.
I love you and baby. I feel like I'm well adjusted.
Everyone pretends not to notice.
Power and money, power and money, power and money is one little person, one little person.
And I wonder what it feels like to belong to the public.
Standing! Load! Eight! 5!
It's hard, and it's hard for one little person to survive if you're by yourself.
Goodness.
What do I do? What do I do? I was scared.
But she has changed.
You know those bumper stickers where it says happens and then you die? They should have where happens and then you live, because that's really the truth of it.
She's no longer trapped by destiny, trapped by destiny. Ever since she let go of the past, she found her life was beginning.
I know nothing about nothing. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No longer trapped by destiny.
I know nothing about nothing. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No longer trapped by destiny. No longer trapped by destiny.
I know nothing about nothing. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No longer trapped by destiny.
I know nothing about nothing. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
No longer trapped by destiny.
Why are you sad?
I'm not.
Survive if you're by yourself.
No longer trapped by destiny.
Survive if you're by yourself.
I'm happy. No longer trapped by destiny.
Survive if you're by yourself. I was scared.
No longer trapped by destiny.
Well, I'd like to say that I'm back. You'll like it a lot better this time, and it's going to last forever. So.
Avanti popolo, alla riscossa, bandiera rossa, bandiera rossa. Avanti popolo, alla riscossa, bandiera rossa, trionferà, bandiera rossa, la trionferà, la riscossa, bandiera trionferà, bandiera rossa, la trionferà, e viva il comunismo e la libertà, bandiera rossa, la trionferà, la riscossa, bandiera rossa, la trionferà, e viva il comunismo e la libertà, trionferà, la riscossa, bandiera rossa, antipopolo, alla riscossa, bandiera rossa, trionferà.
My first time experiencing racism in Bridgeport was over chaining a bicycle to the post of a parking sign. I'd moved to the neighborhood 6 months earlier, to the safer east of Halsted section known as Old Bridgeport, into a slumlord apartment with no locks on the door downstairs. I eventually lucked up and got an apartment 1 block over, with hardwood floors instead of carpeting, and natural light instead of sallow incandescents. And because I was always working, and my bike was rummaged from working bikes on Western, I left a cable locked outside across the street, on a sign warning against parking during White Sox season unless you had a pass. Running up the stairs one afternoon after leaving it there, I heard a woman's voice calling from over my shoulder. "Hey, you can't leave your bike here." "What?" "You can't leave your bike here. I saw you move in, and, welcome to the neighborhood. But this is our lawn. You can't just leave your bike parked anywhere." "Oh, sure," I said, putting the combination in before wheeling it over to lock on a kitty-quartered signpost across the street. But it wasn't her lawn. This is what my new roommate told me, after seeing me talking to our neighbor while he was parking. That strip of grass with the sign was public property. The city of Chicago was responsible for all of the upkeep, the mowing, the weeding, the edging. The building it was in front of housed rental tenants, like us. That woman was just being possessive, laying claim to space she thought she could just because. "Oh, good for you, not above talking to the help," he'd said, upstairs, remarking at how she'd gone out of her way to strike up a conversation with a black mailman after telling me to get off her lawn. I'd noticed it. The deliberate smile and glance in my direction to assure me that this wasn't about what I probably thought it was about. "Such regressive, ignorant bullshit," my roommate said, glowering at her from our third-floor window. At a certain point, I took to hauling my bike up the 3 flights, just because I didn't want the stress of tripping wires I didn't know existed. The classic Chicago paradox. You can do whatever you want, so long as you know where you are at all times. But that's the first thing you learn about Bridgeport, that everything is territorial. Originally anchored by the Illinois and Michigan Canal Project of 1836, the neighborhood attracted white immigrant workers, the Irish mostly, but also Germans and Norwegians, and eventually Lithuanians and Polish people. The canal's completion attracted lumberyards, manufacturing, and meatpacking. The Union Stockyards, made infamous by Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, sits at the neighborhood's southernmost border. Out of operation since 1971, the only remaining piece of the sprawling compound is its castle-esque limestone gate, which formed the basis of an industrial park deemed a National Historic Landmark in 1981. Thoroughly muted in the city's culture by globalization, the decreasing purview of labor, you can still smell the putrescence of over a century's worth of carcasses baked into the soil when you drive by in the summer heat. The park is dedicated by a Daley, Richard M., Chicago's longest-serving mayor. The general dynamic of Bridgeport, and Chicago politics in general, is impossible to understand without examining his family's political history. In its stranglehold on the city's political imagination, one has to reach toward the Kennedys in Boston, or the Roosevelts in New York, and find an influence as pervasive or entrenched. Yet despite William Bill Daley, Richard's brother, serving briefly as Barack Obama's chief of staff, the family has largely stayed off the national scene, seemingly due to a preference for maintaining their kingdom rather than expanding it. While Anton Cermak is technically the inventor of machine politics, Bill and Richard M.'s father, Richard J. Daley, transformed it into an art. Hailing from Bridgeport's Hamburg section, Daley rose up the ranks of the state representative, director of revenue, a Cook County clerk, and eventually the city's mayor. Due to maintaining his chairmanship of the Cook County Central Committee, and palm-greasing amongst industry leaders, unions, and federal agencies, Richard J. managed to oversee construction projects that culminated in the Chicago skyline, a massive expansion of O'Hare Airport, and the establishment of the University of Illinois at Chicago, when ensuring that Democrats controlled every significant government post in the city by the 60s, and most of the elected offices. The other side of the Daley's origin story begins at the Hamburg Athletic Club, on 37th and Emerald, an all-white organization of which Richard J. was a member. American Pharaoh, Elizabeth Taylor and Adam Cohen's biography of Daley Sr., describes it as part social circle, part political organization, and part street gang. As Rachel Kim pointed out in a recent Southside Weekly article, the Hamburg wasn't the only athletic club in the city organized around whiteness, but it was notable for its staunch enforcement of racial dividing lines. For Bridgeport, that'd be Wentworth Avenue, where a highway literally divides predominantly black Bronzeville and predominantly white Bridgeport. The poet Langston Hughes reportedly told the story of returning with black eyes and a swollen jaw, having been beaten up by an identified Irish street gang, who said they didn't allow niggers in the neighborhood. After crossing the boundary, as recently as 1997, Leonard Clark, a black boy riding a bicycle along the neighborhood's border, was beaten into a coma by 3 white teenagers. In a city as notoriously segregated as Chicago, none of this should be surprising. What sets it apart from other areas of the city is its hold on municipal power. Richard J. Daley was preceded by Bridgeport residents Edward Kelly and Martin Kennelly. Upon his death in 1976, Michael Bilandic finished out Richard J.'s term in office, extending the neighborhood's mayoral dynasty from 1933 to 1979. The brutality turned against Vietnam War protesters at the 1968 Democratic National Convention was frequently used against Chicago's black residents, who were dropped off in the neighborhood by police as an interrogation tactic, or a punishment for suspected crimes. The Southside Police Headquarters on 35th in Michigan and the 9th District Station on 32nd in Halstead have only served to bolster Bridgeport, and by extension the city's, revolving door relationship to political power, inculcated by neighborhood relationships and maintained by force. The probability of a police officer being a neighbor, or a high school classmate, or a member of your parish, or all of these, is simply higher here, with all the attendant implications of blind eyes and favor granted afflicting the city's political class played out on street level. The second time I experienced racism in Bridgeport was driving down Union Avenue, on my way to Maria's Community Bar, which is located in the hipper, west of Halstead side known as New Bridgeport. Other than anti-blackness, the neighborhood is notorious for residents' commitment to double parking, and on busy days the entire left-hand side of the street is congested with cars with their hazards on, either picking up pizza and sandwiches from Freddy's Italian Eatery, or sitting in his dining room for several hours, watching White Sox highlights or the local news on WGN. The car closest to the traffic light didn't transition from its hazards to a turn signal. I hooked a left on 31st Street from the right lane assuming it was stationary. No collision, but pulled over near the sidewalk, the white driver hollered, "Don't look at me!" out of his SUV window as I tried to explain to him that he was in the wrong. I did look away for a split second before turning back in his direction, beyond anger as he told me to get out of this neighborhood before speeding off. This was my neighborhood. At that point, I'd been there 5 or 6 years. Because of its straight shot from the highway, restaurants on the east side, such as Freddy's or Pancho Pistolas, a Mexican restaurant frequented for its patio and the strength of its margaritas, arguably catered to more black and brown residents than the west side. Paradoxically, you could argue that the close proximity to Bronzeville puts white residents on heightened alert. Black people might eat there, but they damn sure don't live there, goes the xenophobic logic, rendering suspicious anyone found on that side of the neighborhood after a certain time of day. Traditionally, gentrification is considered a displacer of marginalized peoples. Bridgeport's model puts that presupposition to the test. The coagulation of its scene has attracted diversity rather than snubbing it out. Bridgeport Coffee grew from a small business to having satellite locations in the Loop and the Hyde Park Art Center, while Pleasant House, a bakery specializing in meat pies, fish and chips, and other English delicacies, was so successful in its small facade on the corner of 31st and Morgan that it moved its operations one neighborhood north, to predominantly Mexican Pilsen, where it added its own coffee operations, along with bar and waitstaff instead of BYOB. Black residency in Bridgeport remained at something like 3%, but the neighborhood's proximity to Chinatown and Pilsen has transformed the demographics to the most diverse in Chicago outside of Rogers Park. With the exception of Bernice's Tavern, a 55-year-old dive bar located right next to the 32nd Street police station, most of the facades on Halstead that aren't perpetually gated off or affixed with for rent signs are Hispanic and Chinese, Mexican-American fusion, or Sichuan street food organized on a tapas-style menu. New Bridgeport frequencies places no questions asked. Old Bridgeport participates while harboring resentment that Chinatown and Pilsen are bleeding into the community unopposed. Both sides acknowledge the essentially run-down nature of Halsted from 31st on up, but few residents are in agreement about what to do about it, because there is scant agreement about what Bridgeport is. As it stands, too many people are laying claim to the city and the area for it to be anything beyond an affordable place to live. After parts of Chicago's protest over the killing of George Floyd spun off into looting downtown over the weekend of May 31st, Mayor Lori Lightfoot shut down the CTA, blocked all access to the loop except for essential workers, and instituted a 9 p.m. curfew. However, on June 3rd, the police station in Bridgeport were more concerned with keeping protesters from crossing the highway into Bronzeville, which became the site of a caravan protest. My wife Whitney and I were on our way there, uneasy about COVID-19, feeling compelled because it was in close proximity to our apartment. After being blocked off from walking there on 35th Street, we tried to go down 33rd Street from Normal, a cul-de-sac street that someone drove down nonetheless upon seeing us and kept at a creep behind several paces before speeding off. That was odd. 33rd Street was also blocked off, so we wound up going east on Princeton, past the patios of Turtles and Cork and Kerry where, if you didn't know there was a pandemic, you'd swear that there was a White Sox game due to the insane amount of people and the lack of face masks. A sleepy residential street, Princeton was quiet in comparison until about halfway down the 3200 block, where too many people were sitting out on their porches for it to be a normal evening wind-down. When we hit the corner on 31st, a major street, there were no cars except for the police vans blocking traffic. Across the street, a mob of angry whites stood on the corner with bats, hyping each other up with their eyes toward Wentworth. Whitney, a white woman, started hyperventilating, remarking about how it was out of another fucking era, but in large chunks of Bridgeport, that era never concluded. As we hooked a left and hightailed it toward our block, we passed several police officers, none of whom stepped in to tell this throng of bros in basketball shorts, t-shirts, and sliders to go back to their homes. Several reports over the following days corroborate this. In a Kim's Southside Weekly article, one resident said that a police officer laughed off his concern over the men and refused to report the incident, telling him that it was not illegal to walk down the street with a bat. According to police scanner recordings, officers described the vigilantes as neighborhood folks, upon receiving information by the police dispatcher of the group's behavior. In Newsweek, Catherine Fung was told by a resident that the group, which stopped him for wearing a mask, asked to see his ID to prove he lived in the area, and told him not to wear all black because it made him look suspicious. There are even accounts of this mob, or other residents with similar ideas, being out drunk patrolling the neighborhood well past curfew. I would not say that this is the third time I experienced racism in Bridgeport. That would probably be the time a drunk Mexican man called me a nigger in the laundry that I used to go to when I wound up in the old slumlord apartment before I had a proper basement laundry. Or the time someone yelled mud shark out of their window driving past me and Whitney, who was then my girlfriend, on 34th and Halsted, which was such an esoteric slur that we had to look it up. Put succinctly, my body is the filthy sludge that her fin is chopping through. I don't doubt that some people who we saw that day thought that they were racially superior to me, or that black residents were being racially profiled. But what happened on June 3rd seems messier, something like the patois of the national conversation numbing any feel for common sense. Lightfoot is the former president of the Chicago Police Board. Before that, she chaired the Chicago Police Accountability Task Force. Her unwillingness to bite the hand that fed her was one of the main catalysts for winning almost 75% of the vote in Bridgeport's aldermanic ward, which has one of the largest percentages of police populations in the city. Fast forward to her office catching wind of the goings-on in Bridgeport, and her admonishments were directed at the vigilantes on the street corner, not the police officers whose taxpayer-funded responsibility it is to enforce their compliance with the law. She also went out of her way to deny that the CPD was allowing armed residents to police the neighborhood in their stead, and, as only the city's second black mayor, during nationwide protests against racialized police violence, didn't find it necessary to denote Bridgeport's history at all while doing so. And to lay all the blame on the much-maligned black woman lets Bridgeport's white alderman off the hook. Patrick Daley Thompson, the grandson of Richard J. and the nephew of Richard M., initially eschewed his political heritage, appearing as Patrick D. Thompson on his signage for reasons of stubbornness or modesty, until ambition, or his political handlers, convinced him to run on his pedigree. Upon winning the 11th ward by 58% of the vote, Thompson described their communities it encompasses as the most American of wards. It's fitting, then, that rather than acknowledge the politics of white hostility that this historically governed the behavior of its residents, Thompson reverted to the reactionary reasoning of the White House, preferring to discuss how the protests had been hijacked by outside organizations, whose primary goal is to cause harm to local businesses and neighborhoods. It is those anarchists and terrorists that were creating fear throughout our community. According to Newsweek, several residents read a letter in front of the 11th Ward office, imploring Thompson for a stronger comment and further intervention. All they managed to come up with was the obvious statement that the few residents who took it upon themselves to carry bats, sticks, and canes were wrong, and urging concerned residents to call the police. Similar to Lightfoot, none of this acknowledges the conundrum of the vigilantes protecting the community being the terrorists creating fear throughout it for black residents, or the fact that the police are mostly on their side. It was embarrassing to read that when Thompson actually had the ear of Lightfoot during a conference call with aldermen the week following Chicago's heaviest protest volume, that his concern was not safety of his non-white residents, a situation that he was put in as a direct result of Lightfoot's actions, but rather the specter of home invasions that would result in a spate of shootings by local gun owners. Like the knee pressed mercilessly on Floyd's neck, the actions committed in the name of law and order are always defended if an officer with a conceal and carry license does it. Yet on the other end of the spectrum sit newfound residents, whose conception of racism is a countrywide phenomenon, rather than politics as usual. Despite reports of white supremacists being counted among the ranks of the CPD, the problem in Bridgeport isn't Proud Boys. It's people who have never been forced to consider the interests of black residents until very recently. Perhaps the only congruence with national politics is the feeling that events are moving faster than the public is accustomed. The tragedy of Bridgeport isn't that Whitney and I are afraid to put up a Black Lives Matter sign in our window for fear of someone shooting it out. It's our fear for the white family on the first floor, who have treated us with nothing less than consideration and respect, and who don't deserve having their door kicked down in our name.
Woo! Awesome. Really good stuff. So like we said, that was Robin Reid Drake first. Trizzy. Then on the back, we had our great friend Justin Rosier. A little bio for Justin here. J. Howard Rosier lives in Chicago. He edits the Journal Critics Union from Chicago. He currently sits on the National Book Critics Circle board.
Doing big.
His writings appeared in Bookforum, Kenyon Review, Forthcoming, Art in America, tons of other places. Also was selecting to the Guild Literary Complex's 30 Writers to Watch list. He's currently working on a novel. But there we actually got to mention the Guild, another one of our partners tonight. You may have seen their name on the title card. Guild Complex presents Exhibit B. So why don't you tell the folks a little bit about the Guild, Jim?
The Guild is a 30-year-old grassroots literary organization creating performance-based events in and around the Chicagoland area. They partner with other community groups, such as us.
We are a community group.
Yes, on social and restorative justice issues, providing arts and advocacy programming for marginalized voices. Very important work right now.
Yeah, so I am going to throw their website up. I'm also going to throw their donate page up on there.
Yeah.
So if anybody's feeling generous and would like to throw some support their way, it would be well worth your while. So yeah, again, thank you to Robin and Justin for their work. It was awesome. We're going to have a little bit of a different format this time. So first, I'm going to introduce you to Jazzy. Jazzy Smith is a wonderful writer and documentary filmmaker who still owes money to the writing department of the School of the Art Institute for her MFA in writing.
Everyone here does.
Cool, good talk. She has a bet that she'll be writing as long as she owes money to SAIC, aka forever. Currently lives and loves in Brooklyn. Is working with runaway and homeless young people there. That's God's work. So yeah, I think we're gonna go ahead. We're gonna give Jazzy control of the screen. She's gonna show us some stuff right on there. So awesome. Have at it, Jazz.
What's up? Hey, everybody. It's so weird to hear silence. Yeah, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Thank you for inviting me to read. I'm going to be reading a fiction project that I've been working on. And I wanted to like frame it a little bit in case it was like, whoa, what is she reading right now? So I wrote a couple of things on what I think it is. It's a trail mix of touching. It's an aerial view of violence. It's a playbook on how silence travels. It's a personal investigation, and it's about a community of Filipino people eating and being eaten by Las Vegas. And I'm gonna share my screen real quick. Cool. Power. I also want to put out a content warning for mentioning of sexual abuse. Okay, gonna turn off my camera because that's not the point. All right. Oh, also one more thing. If you can't hear me, I know it's like, it seems rude to like interrupt folks, but please unmute yourself and like tell me you can't hear me. Please. Okay. Hard to keep a 3-story house warm. Her grandmother crushing a silverfish in between her fingers while squatting on the bed. Wolf in the backyard. Her grandfather raising his hand to hit Blake and her raising her hand to hit him back. Mary Grace, 13, teaching us how to cyber, like how to paint your nails or sweep the floor. Switching aim boxes casually. Blake always out to scare her little brother Jim Lord, 5, turning off the lights in the basement office as the computer screen flashes a decapitated head. Blake screaming to scare Jim Lord. Her scream preheating Jim Lord's pure scream. Luring Jim Lord into the bathroom, she turned the bidet all the way up so it shot water at him like a toilet clown. Trying on stretch shirts at Express, literally running through the mall, her obsession with her older cousin Faye. Blake was never really nice to me, but held back when it came to me. The love was the refrain. Blake's mom was like a computer that's asleep. Light slowly blinks every 30 seconds, heavy, quiet, as sweet as a trapped person can be. Merciful because she's tired. A baby always tugging at an arm. Blake's love for her mom, Delma, was pointed at her, inched into Blake the deeper she felt. It pained Blake how much she loved her mom, like it kept her from shooting into the sky, like it kept her from hitting anyone whenever she wanted, like it kept her from biting everybody, like it kept her from leaving marks on people. Blake wanted fireworks. She wanted to see a crash or witness an explosion until she became one. She didn't care if the fire built something or destroyed it. Blake's dad thought the house needed to be bigger. Come see my convertible. Look at this new installation. I'm thinking about adding an elevator. Cargo shorts and a white t-shirt. Being unabashed was a way out to Blake. Delma was so painfully there, painfully still at home. Blake wore her dad, said her first car would be a Mercedes. When Atita shook her head, Blake shouted, "Yes, it will be, you'll see." Didn't matter how loud she could shout, she wasn't exempt from feeling her mother's pain, which came from her father. Yet another moment of her love for her mother inching into her even as she tried to escape. When Blake asked for money, he'd open his wallet and she'd snatch the hundreds out, then hide them in her underwear. He'd say, "Tsk, Ay nako, enough, give it back. On the couch, she'd pull out the hundreds, count them, fan herself. Her dad tried to grab them from her, but she'd pull them away so he couldn't reach. She screamed back in an adult's voice, no! These were the only times I'd witnessed Delma and Joseph match in their sentiments, the same angle of chin dropping when they were both dumbfounded by Blake and who she was becoming. My dial-up raised me. Blake and I found porn on my desktop. Oohing, then laughing, then oohing, and then laughing, then silence. Let's pretend we're each other's boyfriends. We didn't have boyfriends. Slamming into each other's pelvis with pretend genitalia we were guessing how to use. Blake bit my nipples hard like she'd bite her brother's arm. It didn't feel like what I thought sex was. It felt like punishment. It felt like Blake's grandpa hitting her going through my nipples. It felt like Blake's dad not being there going through my nipples. It felt like Delma being trapped in a bite going through my nipples. We were trying to get closer to something. Blake's biting was her method of approximating towards a truth. My softness was a method of approximating towards a truth. I kissed hers so differently, like I did my mother's. I'd asked my mother for permission to give a kiss to each of her breasts after she got out of the shower. Like, thank you, thank you. These extensions of a body projecting horizontally in a vertical world, so inspiring to me. I couldn't help but thank them. Large pillars in the middle school courtyard, like trunks of cement trees. Small stones bedazzled the pillars. Lots of light circulated through the courtyard. Bees swarmed at least 3 times a year. We'd be siloed in a cafeteria as we witnessed the bees go through their bulb in the air. We'd take the blue circles hiding in the top of plastic Coke bottles and tear out the middles with our teeth. Taking the circumference of the blue plastic, we stretched it out to make a blue bracelet. If someone snapped and broke one you were wearing, you had to have sex with them. Those were the rules that were told. A classmate with long brown hair hanged herself that year. Emily broke her arm while looking at a lizard on her bike that year. Blake told me in between the pillars about how her grandma would pinch Jim Lord's TT. Seemed the same to when her grandmother would crush the silverfish, a willingness to take life. The gesture seemed like a grown-up relative to Blake slapping Jim Lord across the face. Seemed like a family member to her grandpa zapping the barking Labrador with a shock collar. Seemed like a family member to Joseph looking at Delma like storage. Before we could even understand the weight of their choices, we felt them. Blake would tell her grandma to stop. Blake would tell her grandpa to stop. Blake would tell her dad to stop. And that's when I learned shouting didn't necessarily save anything. Her grandma said pinching made Jim Lord be healthy. Blake didn't say anything else when she told me about it the first time, but I doubt she believed that. She wanted to, though, and that was another thing about Blake. She really wanted to trust the adults in her life. She wanted to use their shield. The next time I brought it up, feeling defensive, Blake used the words, it's supposed to make him be healthy. And in repeating these words was like passing on an egg. Her grandmother told her that. She told me that. That's the thing about both of us. We really wanted to trust the adults in our lives. Sometimes I ask, why do we take the egg? But how could we not take the egg? How could we not choose the shield? Sometimes that's all we could do is lie down for the lies that were passed down to us. Roll it on to the next set of hands. Thank you.
Just a sec. But thank you. We know some very talented people. And
Yes.
We're very lucky to have
and we're going to
you guys
have,
performing with us.
Yeah, we're going to have one more video for y'all, but this is going to be our last time on screen with you. So we wanted to thank everybody again. We want to thank all our performers. We want to thank the Guild for being involved. I wanted to mention one more time, we had a message at the beginning of the videos about accessibility. If you or anyone you know has issues of accessibility with this show, we have a recording of it. We will try and get it to you as soon as we can if you reach out to us. Please also reach out and let us know, because we want everyone to be involved going forward. We'd love to hear suggestions of how to make that happen. Let us know. We're more than happy to do that work to try and get everyone involved. And again, thank you. And our last thing, also, we want to keep an eye on the event page that brought you guys here. We're going to have details on our next event later in the fall, same venue on Zoom. And yeah, it's also, hopefully that'll be where the recording of tonight's performance will be found as well.
Yes, and I'd like to thank a few people as well. To do anything that has anything to do with the arts, it takes a lot of free labor. So I'd like to send a special thanks to Mason Stewart, little brother, Karen Shapiro, for creating our incredible logo, Mary Cerny.
Yeah, who also just told me to stop touching my toes on screen. So shout out to the wife for that. Thank you.
It's pretty gross. And we'd also like to thank my wife, Kristen Stewart, for putting up with us in the house and doing a lot of the driving around.
Yes, a lot of the ferrying us around.
Yes, a lot of ferrying us around.
And completing our childish projects when we need an adult to do things for us.
Every now and then.
But yeah, so we're going to leave you guys with one more video. 2 artists in this video for you. The first, who did the words for the video, an enigmatic man, rarely seen. His name is James Stewart III. He's a writer from Chicago. He earned his MFA at the School of Art Institute Chicago. Can't believe I didn't run into him there. That's weird. Has an MA from North Central College as well. Writing has appeared in Pangyris, another Chicago magazine, Cowboy Jamboree, tons of other places. Also a managing editor of Critics Union. Is currently finishing a novel. James also works as a paraprofessional in the Chicagoland area with high school students. So pretty great. Thank you.
Bills.
Yeah, and then lastly, we did our awesome video for us that you'll see, as well as Sarah Goodman. Sarah Goodman loves subculture. She wants to go deep into that subculture, so deep, maybe she'll come out the other end. Once she fell into an old monitor screen, and her life has never been the same. She's also a poet and a video artist interested in the ways that hardware, software, and interfaces interact with us as human beings. She is also a teacher in Chicago. There are some wild educators in the city of Chicago. It's awesome. So yeah, check it out. And we'll see you guys next time.
Sure.
So my whole family was born in Chicago. 3 brothers, a sister, mom and dad. Somehow I ended up born in North Dakota. So that's another story. So it was about 6 years ago, I finally moved into the city, into Chicago. And like, it wasn't my first time visiting from the Chicagoland area, southwest suburbs, Naperville, Aurora to be specific. My mom's from Jefferson Park. My dad grew up on the south side in Englewood. And being as segregated of a city as Chicago is, you could deduce quite easily and accurately that my mom's white and my dad's black. I moved into the city with my girlfriend at the time. She'd eventually become my wife. It's not a big giveaway or anything. The thing that you grow up your whole life and Chicago becomes part of you. It's a town that fights. You know, labor and politics, it's the home of Ida B. Wells, Lucy Parsons, Fred Hampton. The current president tried to throw in his fascist rallies at UIC organizers and the people. I said, that's not particularly what we're about here. Get the fuck out. And you try to think, like, what is it specifically about a city? And I think it's the people more than anything. And now we live in a building that's by the lake. There's just this little park right next to us. And there's a lot of regulars that we see. And I don't know any of their names. It's just people. And there's a particular family that comes just about every night to walk their dog, this big mastiff. It's a father, a mother, and their little boy. So we've been here 5-6 years now, and at first we saw the little boy as a toddler on his little mini scooter wobbling around on the thing. And then you see he eventually gets a little better, able to control it, weaves in and out, traffic and dogs. Gets a little bigger. He gets a balancing bike. And now, you know, you see him on just a regular bicycle. And you see this family, they just seem like they have a lot of the things you'd want. Things seem to be going all right. They seem to be happy. And so, being a Chicagoan, after the deaths of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and Ahmaud Arbery, you saw how Minnesota responded. And you have these really high expectations of the people from your city that they'll respond in kind. So on May 31st, me and my wife and a friend of ours went downtown to protest. And like I said, we're way up north. We hop on the train. We already see there's other protesters there, other people with signs. It's unusual. And granted, it still is the time of COVID. So we head downtown and we get off the train, and there's just a wave of people flowing to the Federal Plaza, right? But it's always hard to tell where exactly you are in relation to this larger crowd and how many people exactly are there. It was a lot. It was a lot. The news reports eventually said somewhere between 20 and 30,000. And if you've been to protests like I have, I guess right after I first moved down here, it was the time shortly after Laquan McDonald was murdered. And the Chicago Police Department and the mayor at the time worked to cover it up. And so here we are again downtown. The new reason is the same as the old one, as it often is in the country. And you feel a lot of different things in these protests. You feel camaraderie, that there's other people that care about. It seems just basic people that care about things like our rights and our ability to live free and dignified lives. So there's this huge mass of people downtown. And the goal always ends up to be to take over Lakeshore Drive. eventually when you hit like a critical mass of people, I don't know, hundreds. And we eventually did shut down Lakeshore Drive. It's hot. The lake's slapping against the shore. And it's too many people for the cops to do anything about particularly. So they weren't around. The helicopter flew overhead, and everyone had the same message for that helicopter every time it circled around. His middle fingers in there and fuck 12. And the organizer, hooked up some speakers, and there was a open mic. Poetry as people sat and shared snacks, shared bottles of water, a wee bit of weed in the air. And in that moment, it was very clear to see the future that the protesters out there fighting for. It was multicultural, multiracial, people of varying classes, people of varying abilities, people of different ages, together. So after the 3 or 4 performers, we moved back into the city. We ended up in front of the Wrigley building. When we get there, there's cops, full riot gear, defending the building. And the cops look scared with their bulletproof vests and guns on their side and the Chicago blue helmet. It's very clear that there's a different feeling that was in this crowd. That was power. It's also part of what we're fighting for. The ability to make our own decisions in a city that they say is supposed to be democratic, in a country that we're told is democratic, that our voices matter. So these cops end up getting themselves stuck. 30, 40, 50 protesters, this very little area, and just more flooding in. Eventually gets to the point where the full weight of this crowd, thousands, are right around these police officers. The horses come, and the bike cops come in to the rescue, or they try to. And that's when my wife links arms with me and tries to link arms with someone else to try to block the path of these cops. It didn't work this time. Yeah. And so the cops are pushing us back with their batons. And one goes by and tells my wife that it's not worth it. And she summons up all her white woman energy and tells that cop that you don't know what you're talking about. That I'm here for my husband and my child that'll be black. She was a few weeks pregnant. We just found that out. And the officer didn't seem particularly ready for that answer. And I think that a lot of the people that have a problem with this movement aren't ready for that answer. And that our vision is something simple. And our vision is that we want what that family has in our park, that we've watched their child grow up. Seem to have a steady enough job to have this wonderful routine. They know where they're going to rest their head every night. They don't have to worry about cops breaking in their house, shooting their mother dead while she sleeps. They don't have to worry about their son growing up to be murdered in cold blood in broad daylight on a street by the police. Black Lives Matter.